Hey guys, along the Emmaus road here, excited to be diving in. We're trying to engineer a little studio with light. So if you had a bird's eye view of what's going on here, we've got lights hanging from the ceiling. We have got finagled pulley systems. We've been stealing lamps from this campus. So
yeah, we're right here at IHOP International Express.
So we're trying to make it work. But anyway, we're here, and I'm really excited.
We're here because they're remodeling we're doing some construction on our house.
So
it's terrible. We're kicked out of our own house, people.
Every other video, so we're like in a new environment. Before you know it, we're going to be like out in,
We're going to be in a van down by the river.
Exactly.
With a little
Farley style.
with a little battery flashlight.
And then
we are.
And then it'll be hippies.
Along the Manse Road.
Hippies out in nature. Okay, well anyway.
By the Missouri River.
I'm living in a van down by the river. Anyway.
Okay, here we go.
Oh man, a little SNL thing. Well, I'm excited today. This is kind of timely.
Yeah.
To be diving into the light of the Father and the Son. But I've been meditating on this reality of the Father's delight in the Son. I don't want to give it away, but what kind of hit me was the other day, I was in a coffee shop, and all these people were passing by. And you know when you have those little epiphanies, and you realize all these people walking by are so much more than the type of shirt they're wearing, than the type of coffee they have in their hand, than the persona they give off, that within all these people is this precious, intimate, inward reality of who we are. And I was beginning to think that beneath all these people are passions, desires, idiosyncrasies, ways they want to live in the world, how they tick, what they find beautiful. And it just got me thinking about even myself. What are those inward things that make me tick, that not many people know about me? How I want to live my life, what I want the world to look like, what I find beautiful. Another thing, I know you'll love this, is that what is my sacred space?
Right.
When all the stars align, what is my sacred space? For me, I was thinking about it, my sacred space is when I go into my room, I shut the door, I light a candle, I get in my bed, and I open up a book. And I actually have I have about 10 books right now next to my bed. I mean, I have a book of FDR biography, a book, I could go down, it's an amalgam of different things. But even for you, what would your sacred space be? I'm just curious. I know it a little bit. I can guess.
Guess.
Well, it has to be a window there.
Has to be a window. I have to be outdoors looking, or it has to be a window peering through to something of trees.
Yeah.
Trees is what does it for me.
So you have to have a window. I mean, we'll go to a restaurant. It doesn't even matter how good the food is, even though you're a foodie. We have to sit next to the window. I remember one time we went to a restaurant and the food wasn't even that great, but we got the window seat.
It was terrible.
And the food wasn't good, but the view was great.
The view was great,
and
I was happy.
Was great, and you're happy. And so a window, I mean, I imagine you would have to have some type of hot drink, like a coffee or a tea.
Sure.
But you would have to, maybe mom's there, and you're
wherever mom's at, it's sacred space. If you just want to get down to it, it's where mom's at. You know.
So window, hot drink, mom's there, your Bible open, and maybe what more?
That's a good start. There are other things, but that's a good start.
So
So I'm
sitting in this coffee shop, and I'm thinking beneath the shell of all these people, the persona they give off, are inward realities, inner worlds. And I was thinking about how there's times in our life we open little windows into our interior world. It's that thing we call vulnerability. When we open the little window and we allow people to get little glances, not full glances, little peeks into who we are.
Sure.
And there's those times I was thinking about my life when we open those little windows, and it's almost like someone goes, no, thank you. So it's okay. And whether they disagree or they're indifferent, or whatever it looks like, there's these moments when we really expose who we are to people, and the way they respond doesn't meet the expectation of intimacy, and there's rejection. And
there's
disappointment. And that's part of life. But then there's these moments when we open little windows into our interior world, and someone kind of they see the hole, they see the little window, and they know you're intentionally doing it, and they snuggle through,
and they join you in your delight.
I like to think they see the closet that you're opening up. They go through the door, and suddenly it's snowing, and there's a light pole, and they're in the Narnia of your world.
They're in your Narnia.
Your Narnia. Everyone has a Narnia.
Right.
I was thinking about this, and
that's right.
And how those moments when people are able to relate and enjoy and see where we shine and call us forward, that's when we feel intimacy. That's when we feel connection.
Sure.
And how we need that. And so I was beginning to ask the question, what's my interior world? Really, who am I? Obviously, the more we discover who we are, the more potential for pain. Because if you don't know who you are, you actually can't have intimacy with people.
That's right.
But when you know who you are and you discover yourself, that's the moment of vulnerability. And so I was asking this question, who am I? All these things, and I'm kind of leading up. Who am I? What's my interior world? What's my sacred space? What type of world do I want to live in? What do I enjoy? What do I find beautiful? And then, as I was meditating on this, I just was thinking, Father, and what I wanted to say is that interior world, who we are, is what's called the soul. That's what theologians, philosophers have called the soul, your soul. That
your mind, your will, your emotions.
Who you are.
What makes up your personality.
Exactly. And I was thinking, what is in the soul of God? Whatever the soul of God is. If God was to open a little window into who he is, God the Father was to open a little window into who he is, what makes him tick? What does he find beautiful? What does he enjoy? What's his sacred space? What's the type of world he envisions and how he wants to live in it? Right. And I was beginning to think, whoa, because often these moments are precious because we realize God is person.
Right.
God is person. And this is what...
So you're saying, really, revelation is God opening a window to a soul.
Exactly.
He shows himself. He reveals himself. And we get the opportunity to go to Narnia or not.
Exactly.
We can go in the closet and meet around the lamp pole.
Exactly.
Or we can retreat and go back to our own lives.
Yeah. And I was thinking, wow. And I was specifically thinking of God the Father. And through meditating on the scriptures, through contemplating this, it's almost like the whisper of the Spirit was saying to me about the Father. The Father's delight, his joy, has eternally been a delight of his Son. That the Father's eternal delight, if you open a little window into who the Father loves and enjoys, it's his delight in Jesus, the eternal Son.
Right.
And it was so precious to me that and we could go a lot of places with this, because this is a precious thing. But to think, often when we think of the Father, I'll say this, we think of his delight in us. When we think God the Father, we think his delight in us as his children, his enjoyment of us. And I think that's a powerful reality.
Well, some people would. Some would think of his disappointment in us.
Oh, it's true. So the flip
or
side...
of his anger towards us, or of his sadness towards us.
Yes. And I think there's that needed revelation of understanding the light of the Father. It's all throughout, the Pauline epistles and the New Testament. But I was thinking, before we were ever in the equation, before God created the world, he was eternally delighting in the Son. And let me kind of venture into the mystery of the Trinity. And when you venture into the mystery of the Trinity, your vernacular is an inch away from heresy.
Sure.
You're always about to... So
sure.
I might mess this up a little bit.
Sure.
But I was thinking about specifically Jonathan Edwards and how he was talking about... He wrote on that the Son is the Father's eternal contemplation of himself. The Son is the image of the invisible God. And I had almost this picture, and maybe my vernacular is an inch from heresy, so help me out. Keep me grounded here, orthodoxy. But that it's almost like when the Father looks in a mirror, when the invisible God looks in a mirror, what the invisible God sees, what the Father sees,
is his Son.
Is his Son.
Yes.
that Jesus is the eternal image of God, and that God's eternal delight and glory and joy is the Father's joy in the Son. And to kind of hit on what...
So in a sense, God lets himself in on his own window.
Yes.
He goes to Narnia with himself.
Exactly.
As Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
And I think this is why the Trinity is the breakthrough, because it's the realization that God is community.
God is love.
And God is love. And to hit that, what we talked...
God is delight.
Yeah. And to hit on what we talked about last video, St. Augustine, you know, I was reading him this week, and he was saying how in the scriptures there's lots of attributes about God. God is just, God is merciful, he is kind, he is gracious. You could even go into certain attributes, lots of different things. But the point is, he would say, God's love isn't his attribute. God's love is his very nature. And under the umbrella of love, under the canopy of love,
all the other attributes.
All the attributes.
Right.
God is love. You know, as John says in his first epistle, and how what St. Augustine sought to provide an explanation for the Trinity through the lens of God as love, and how the Father is the lover, the Son is the beloved, and the Spirit is the love they share.
That's right.
And that eternally God has delighted in himself, loved himself, Father, Son, Spirit. And I'm opening up a can of worms, and we'll take it where we go. But what I was thinking, specifically this, the Father's delight in the Son, and how the greatest joy of the Father over us is when we are conformed to the image of his Son.
That's right.
And so I think, one, the eternal delight of God the Father is his Son.
Yes.
So I want to say this. If the eternal delight and joy of God the Father is his Son, then our highest satisfaction and fulfillment and delight as human beings is when we taste a glimpse of the Father's delight in the Son.
Yes.
And this...
But you've got to lay a little bit of a foundation in the sense that God's delight in the Son, as the expressed image of the Father, the very radiance of the Father's glory, is God's delight in himself.
Yes.
Now, if we said that would be an arrogant thing. Like we're,
you're so vain.
You're so vain.
You probably think the song
and
is
that's
about
why,
you.
Yeah, you're so vain. and don't get us off the list.
80s pop.
And so, but God as the eternally blessed, happy, delightful, compassionate, there's no one higher than him. So God's delight in himself is the most just and right and good and moral thing to do. And it's the most happy thing to do. So as he delights in his Son, he's delighting in the highest expression of personhood that is. But you took it a step further. You went, so God's delight in us is when that very expression of the Son comes through us, manifests in us, formed in us. To Christ is formed in you. And Paul says, I labor till Christ is formed in you.
Exactly. So it's, I believe it's 2 Corinthians 3:17, talking about when we behold Jesus, when we experience the eternal delight of the Father and the Son, that's the very means by which we are transformed from glory
That's right.
to glory.
That's right.
And I'm just so touched that the delight of the Father and the Son is both our highest joy and fulfillment, and two, our ground of acceptance before God. Here's why. Part of this idea of being set right, a justification of redemption, of what, being united with God because of the cross is this. Because we're now in the Son, because of what he's done, God delights in us. We are sons because we are in the Son.
Right.
And suddenly, lots of scriptures are starting to connect dots.
So the highest privilege that God gave us as those made in his image is he pulled us into his own delight. He pulled us into the highest delight, which is delight in his Son. which is the delight in his own reflection, his own image, his
Really?
expression,
And
his personhood.
And suddenly the scriptural narrative is coming together, because when God made us and said that you are good, we are good because we're made in his image. And we're made to be image bearers, reflecting three categories here. And these are, they call them the transcendentals in philosophy. And theologians have wrestled over these. It's the good, the true, and the beautiful. Goodness has to do with your moral quality, moral perfection. Truth has to do with the relationship to knowledge and reality. That God is reality, God is moral perfection, and third, beauty, which is form, radiance, glory, how aesthetically pleasing and lovely something is. And so God is that which is most true. He is reality. That which is most good. He is moral perfection. And he is that which is most beautiful. He is radiant, lovely form. And the point is this: God delights in himself because God delights in that which is most true, most good, and most beautiful. For him to love anything else would be idolatry. Because he is what is.
He's the highest.
He's the highest.
He's the most beautiful, he's the most good, and he's the most excellent.
And God
most true.
Makes us as image bearers to reflect his goodness, his truth, and his beauty into the world. And so
wait, let me ask you a question. Okay, because this is deep.
This is a lot.
This is a lot. So God delights, God's highest good is to delight in himself. Yeah. And because he's the most beautiful, he's the most true. The most and so God's delight is his highest delight is to behold his Son, who is the very radiance of his glory and the express image of his personhood. Yeah. Now, wait a minute. If that's the highest delight that there is in all of reality, you mean God lets us behold what he has always beheld, his Son? The fact that God would even let us behold his Son means that he just opened the closet door and said, come on in to my Narnia.
It's the vulnerable moment.
It's the vulnerable moment. Wow, that brings us to the whole new meaning when Jesus says, blessed are those who aren't offended at what I'm like. God the Father just let you in to his soul, to his personhood when he gave Jesus as the gift to the human race. Jesus is the gift of contemplation to the human race. We get to behold what the Father has beheld, and we get to experience the delight that the Father gets to experience.
And so there's two competing realities here. There's beholding God, and there's becoming like him. And here's what's amazing. I love you talk about this, how Jesus isn't simply the highest revelation of God to man. He's the highest revelation of man to man.
That's right.
In Jesus, genuine humanity is restored, as N.T. Wright, one of my favorites, talks about. And the reason it's restored is because in the garden, we're made to be the image bearers. We're made to reflect God's truth, God's goodness, God's beauty into the world. And here's the simple picture. I love how God actually makes the world in a way so we find pictures in creation to describe these transcendent realities. Here's a simple illustration. You've probably heard it said a lot. Look at our solar system. So we have Earth, one of many planets. Pluto's gone. Sad day. Sorry, Pluto, I miss you. And what we have is we have the moon, which basically the moon is called a satellite, which basically a body of rock, a celestial piece of rock that is orbiting the Earth. Doesn't shine. It's a piece of rock. But the way the moon's set up is that the light of the sun reflects through it into the world. And so there's this picture of God is the sun, we're the moon. And the point is, the moon doesn't shine at all. It's a rock. Humans are a piece of rock. We have no goodness, truth, or beauty in of ourselves. But God chooses to flesh his glory, his light into us, and we suddenly shine into a dark world.
That's right.
And I love that picture.
I love the verse in Psalm 50. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. And as that relates to us,
Yeah.
we're that perfection of beauty where God shines through us.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the delight of the Father and the Son. And we're going to go through the life of Christ, a couple different ways where we see the Father's delight in the Son. But I want to tie the bow tie here on this. And so there's these two realities. There's beholding the Son, beholding the eternal delight of the Father, the soul of the Father, who he is, that internal reality, his delight in the Son, beholding him, and two, becoming like him. That it's the joy of the Father to transform us in the image of Christ. And here's a word, it's scandalous, wrestle over it, but it's what some of the old theologians call divinization. They talked about the divinization of the saints, and here's the point. Not that
perfection.
perfection. Not that
going on to perfection.
Not that we become God, but that we become like him.
We become partakers in the divine nature.
Exactly.
Peter would say.
Exactly. You see the traces of how the apostles worded that.
Sure.
And I love that reality. And here's the thing we'll leave it at. What some of the great saints in history, theologians, have said is that when we're resurrected, when we see him and we become like him, that actually isn't the fullness of our becoming like him. What they said is that eternally we will be transformed into the image of Christ. Meaning in 1 billion years from now, we will still behold him more and become like him more. That even though we'll be saved and there's a finality to the resurrection, there actually is a reality.
There's still growth.
We're still transformed from glory to glory.
We shine brighter.
We shine brighter.
The wattage can always go up in the bulb.
And so here's my point. When we, as we're about to do in the next video, look at the Father's delight in the Son, this is the two things I want to say. This is our means for joy and satisfaction. And this is our means for becoming like Christ. I tell you, when you look at the delight of the Father in the Son, holiness and righteousness has a brand new perspective. It's not conforming to a list of arbitrary rules and laws that God set up to make your life horrible. It's actually, I am becoming conformed to the image that I was made to be. I am suddenly partnering with God, and his goodness, his truth, and his beauty shines through me. This is what being human is all about. And that's what I love about Christ. He comes and he shows us what being human is all about, and he shows us what being God is all about.
No, that's glorious. I tell you, there's some people who are walking away from this video going, wow, those are deep concepts. What's the application?
Yeah, you hit it.
And I would say the application is prayer. It's contemplation. It's asking the Father. I walk away from this going, the Father's highest delight is as his own nature shines in the person of his Son, who he is, and the enjoyment of God the Father as he looks upon God the Son, and the love that goes back and forth. It causes me to go, oh my, God has shared his highest delight with us in the person of his Son. And we get to behold what the Father has always beheld from eternity past. And so I apply it with this short prayer. Father, show me your Son.
Yeah.
Like Moses, show me your glory. Show me your Son. Show me who you delight in. That simple prayer has changed my life in more ways than I can ever imagine. It's calmed my heart and put me before the Father in that relationship of, Father, show me your Son. Show me what he's like, that I might delight in him the way you delight in him, that I might know him and love him the way you know him and love him, and that, Father, ultimately that I might know you and love you and delight in you as you delight in him. So that little prayer is the practical application of this. Just pray it. Small prayers change lives. Pray, Father, show me your Son. Let me delight in what you delight in, because you're acknowledging that the Father has the highest standard of delight. He defines pleasure. He defines beauty. And if this is the closet door, if this is the one closet, that you can open and go to Narnia, you want to go there. And so, Lord, take us there. Let us behold your Son. In Jesus' name. That's good, Samuel.
Be looking forward
That's
to our
good.
next video. Maybe you're going, I didn't get everything that was going on. Trust me, I don't even get what's going on here. I'm trying to, these are
But
deep,
you're growing in it.
precious realities.
You're getting it more than you were 3 years ago.
I'm getting more than I did 6 months ago. And I'll tell you what, we're going to go through a couple situations in the life of Christ where the Father's delight shines over the Son. And I tell you what, there's a doorway. It's open into the soul.
Don't give it away. Don't give it
Amen.
away.
Come on.